Hello, listeners. I'm Arjun, and you're listening to Obo Vinyl's free willing restoration of the art of telling. Today, in episode 2, I would like to share with you my conversation with a very special guest about storytelling. To be more specific, why do we listen to stories? Exactly what are the factors which keeps us all glued to stories, different kind of stories, from our yesteryears to the present? So, dear listeners, buckle up for an engaging conversation as I welcome on board Valentina Trivedi, a master storyteller of eminence and along, an author, short filmmaker, and education consultant of multitude. So, ma'am, my first question would be how do you see storytelling as a subject, as an art form?
Okay. So, like I like to tell people in my storytelling workshops, one of the first few things I tell them is that I can't teach you storytelling. And they're quite aghast at this because they presume that that's what they've come to learn. And then they look really perplexed and then they ask me, but why not, ma'am? And I said, I just can't. And then, some of them keep quiet and some of them then still ask, why not? And I said, it's can I teach you something you already are? Because we are all born storytellers. And especially people born in India are expert storytellers. And I think what has happened in recent years, Arjun, did you listen to stories when you were a child?
Yeah, I used to.
Yeah?
I
Who told
used
you a
to.
story?
First of all, it was my grandmother. Then it was my paternal uncle, my father. So I used to be I used to have a strong fetish about, listening to stories and reading books, both together.
And what kind of stories did your grandmother tell you?
Well, this is very interesting. Unlike other grandmothers, I developed a keen interest of listening to stories of Bangladesh or the then East Bengal. Means both my families, my paternal and my maternal families, they, migrated from East Bengal during the partition. So for me, their childhood days in Bangladesh, in the abundance of natural beauty of Bangladesh, so it used to, quietly intrigue me. And
Okay.
specifically from my paternal uncle, he was my father's elder brother. I used to hear all sorts of stories. That I today feel has developed me as a filmmaker, as
Okay.
someone who is interested into liberal arts.
And I'm going to ask you a very basic question. How did you feel when you were listening to those stories? I suppose it was over 20 years ago that you listened to stories by your grandmother?
Yeah, it's more than 20 years.
More than 20 years,
So,
exactly. So how did it feel when you were listening to that
well,
story?
well, the moments of listening to stories were more like, so fascinating. It's like opening up a window of my imaginations. So I used to develop my own imaginative world, see things. So story was to
Right.
me a window in those
Right.
days.
So while listening, what you're trying to say is while listening, there were pictures unfolding in your mind, right?
Yes, of course,
Yeah.
of course.
And you do remember most of the stories you listened to at that time, isn't it?
Yes, mostly.
Yeah. So there it is.
Right.
That is a power of stories. Your grandmother didn't go and do a course in storytelling,
Absolutely.
nor did your paternal uncle.
Absolutely.
And they told stories, and that is what planted the germ of this fascination with stories in your mind.
Right.
And so that's why I think what has happened now is that it has been straitjacketed, and the storytellers themselves are to blame for it to some extent, because a lot of them sort of say, okay, we are storytellers, we are going to teach you something. But that's not the case. We are all storytellers. So this is what I like to point out to people in my workshops, because you reached home late from somewhere, and you lied to your parents because you were meeting a friend, but you said, no, I had an extra class. That's like telling a story. You open the fridge and you see there are no veggies. You pick up a bag and you go to the market to buy vegetables. That's a story.
Yes.
But there, I think we cannot escape stories.
Yes, there are stories everywhere, actually.
Yeah, each day of our life is full of these small stories all through the day.
Exactly.
And our responses to those stories, and we create new stories, except that we don't call them stories. Right. They are stories. So we have to, like in Vedanta, they say there is, agyan ka parda.
True.
So ignorance, I mean, you're all there, you have it all, but just that curtain of ignorance has to drop.
Very
so
true.
That you are able to see stories, you are able to feel stories, and you're able to realize that you interact with stories all the time.
Very true. Now, ma'am, storytelling, it's absolutely an organic culture. It's been since ages especially in India, the narrative of storytelling and listening to story has always been there in our social manifolds. So now it seems storytelling is being developing as an art form. It's being more like a performance, and many of the storytellers are like an art performer today. In social media, or maybe they're going live. So what do you think about storytelling developing as a performance?
So there are two points I would like to say. Number one, of course, it's great. It's another way of telling stories, and it's fabulous. So any kind of performative storytelling, I do 2-3 different kinds myself, is great, because what is happening now, it is much needed, because children are growing up without stories.
Yes.
There are no grandmothers telling them stories. There are nuclear families. You don't have siblings. With both parents working in the corporate world, you are left at home with a maid who is really probably just going to take care of your physical needs. And you don't, listen to stories from a young age. And so you have to, as an adult, when you go out and watch stories, but that's good, because all these performative story forms are taking us back to seeing the value of stories. Right. And our oral culture of storytelling has always been there, Right. And the fascinating things which I find, like you said, you listen to stories about East Bengal, from where you come from. Yeah. And I think that is very, very vital. And because that is not there, that is like anchoring a kite, True. So you think of a kite which is anchored, where somebody is holding the cord of the kite and it's flying high. And you think of a kite where that thread has been cut. Right. And this is what is happening. A lot of mental problems that people have is because they don't feel anchored to something. And stories were that medium, or rather that panacea, which anchored them to their cultural roots, to the generational wisdom of their parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents. And that was like, how should I say, it was something to lean on in times of distress, because you had this spine of, cultural wisdom which had been handed down to you through stories.
Very true.
That is the thing.
Very true. So, in a way, we could say that listening to stories, it's actually kind of, it's a healing process of the various social negative dictums today people pass through in this fast society, and there's more of a consumer rating society. So storytelling actually creates a ventilation for the people, for the social beings.
When you talk about storytelling, and you just juxtaposed listening to stories and healing. So listening and healing are definitely connected.
Right.
And I firmly believe that all the problems in the world, from any small problem at home to the bigger and the biggest world problems, are because people are not listening.
Very true.
People of one, in a family, one family member not listening to another family member, somebody not listening to his neighbor, people of different communities not listening to each other, people of different religions not listening to each other, people of different countries not listening to each other. And as a species, collectively, we all not listening to our planet Earth.
Actually.
All to do with listening. And that is the other thing, the other benefit of listening.
True.
Actually, you are listening to me right now because your grandmother told you stories through which you learn to listen.
True.
And you talk to young parents these days and you ask them, what is the biggest problem you face? And 9 times out of 10, they will say, our child doesn't listen.
Yeah.
So that is how valuable and how important listening to stories is.
Right. So, ma'am, there was a decade when reading books was a popular culture. I wouldn't say that it's getting extinct. It's still there. There are literary festivals happening. There are book fairs happening. And books are getting published. The publishing industry is... It's not that the publishing industry is dying down, but there seems to be a cutoff of this culture from the general cultural outline of a society now that people don't much read books. So my question is, madam, do you think storytelling, listening to stories, could this be an alternating culture to reading books?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you talked about listening to stories and then you talked about reading stories yourself. So it was a progression. You don't listen to stories, you don't connect to stories, you don't connect to storybooks, and you'll never pick one up to read. So it's like all these things are glued together. So, and what is happening now, and publishing industry is not doing too well in spite of all the books being published.
It is. True.
And there is a sort of a panic, really, because books are being published, but and thanks to the book fairs and thanks to literature festivals, books are becoming more popular now. See, like you rightly said in earlier times, we didn't need the book fairs and the literature festivals to connect us to books.
Right.
As a child, I remember, and I must share this anecdote. As a child, I remember right from when I could toddle around, I was taken to bookstores. And my parents would be browsing in the bookstore. And I was surrounded by these bookshelves even before I could read. And so people are not in an environment of books anymore.
Right.
And that is why these literature festivals and book fairs are important. And I think about 20 years ago, we had moved from Bombay to Delhi. And I was looking for a bookshelf. And I have a ever-growing collection of books in my house. They just keep growing. And like I was telling my son that the real estate in our home library is, escalating in prices, and some books have to go because there are better books coming on.
What a beautiful anecdote, I must say.
And so we went looking for a bookshelf. And it was such an eye-opener. In all the furniture shops we saw sofas and dining tables and chairs and almiras and beds and bedside tables, everything except an ordinary bookshelf.
Yes.
And that really opened my eyes to what the absolutely reduced importance of books in our lives now. And I just, even at my age, and I'm sure it's even fewer at your age probably, I can count on the fingers of one hand, the number of people I know among friends and relatives who have books at home. Okay. Can't think of more than 4 right now. So I think I must have meandered away from your question. What was your question?
Okay. My question was, is storytelling actually creating an alternating culture when book reading is actually going down its popularity?
See, as long as we are connected to stories, be it listening, writing, reading, I think that's all good.
Right.
So it's not that storytelling is reducing readers. I don't believe that. I think storytellers are vital at this point of time in history because they are able to connect people to books. People who would not otherwise go to bookstores, who would otherwise go to a mall or something or watch a movie, are being sort of lured into bookstores because either there is a storyteller doing a session there, or they've gone to a literature festival and listened to a writer or something, and they've gone there to pick up the book.
Right. So, ma'am, my next question is, storytelling is also a popular culture in the social media or in the digital medium right now. As we see with the surge of digital medium, there has been quite a few, forms which have come up, which has become popularized. So storytelling is definitely one. We have lots and lots of, audio podcast, storytelling, audio platforms coming up. So, ma'am, do you think the return back of radio? Radio used to be one of the most primitive electronic media, and radio first existed. Radio was an integral part of our culture. So, in between, a lot of people say that radio is dead, radio is dying, which I personally don't think so. Radio cannot be dead. So, do you think the surge back of radio, it also created space for storytelling in the social media?
So when you talk about radio in the context of today, the FM channels, of course, are listened to. And maybe not so much, maybe the young people are not listening to All India Radio. And we had Binaka Geet Mala when we were growing up and all that.
Yeah.
But the FM channels are there. And as far as, and I think today you can also compare podcasts to radio listening, because that is in the same audio genre. And I think the growth of podcasts, it has been quite phenomenal. Podcasts of all kinds, all genres, all topics, everything. I think that is something to be happy about, because it is again taking you back to the culture of listening.
Exactly.
And most of the time now, people do it when they're multitasking. So they won't sit down and listen to a podcast. They'll probably listen to a podcast while driving or cooking or something else, exercising. But I think even that is good enough, because at least it focuses your attention to something.
Yeah.
And I think attention is something that is, how should I say, its currency is going to grow more and more. It is becoming more and more valuable. Be it as a consumer, be it as a reader, be it as in a relationship. I think attention is becoming more and more important. I think in earlier generations, we took attention for granted. And it was okay, if I remember when I was a child, I could go out and play, and I do my own thing, and my parents were not breathing down my neck all the time. But parents nowadays are so focused on the single child that they have that they're constantly monitoring the child's daily schedule, minute by minute, hour by hour. I'm digressing here a little bit, but this again is, I feel that listening, like I said, is very vital. And this listening to podcasts and listening to audio and is important for a child to grow up in a more healthy manner.
Right.
And one more thing I want to share, which my husband told me. He said he would visit his grandfather's house in Allahabad. And the whole family, you know how it used to be earlier in our generation when we were kids. Big families would get together, extended families, cousins and everything. And he said dinner time used to be at 9 p.m. And when everybody sat down to eat dinner, the radio was switched on and Hawa Mahal used to come.
Right.
Audio plays on the radio.
Yeah.
And he said we couldn't speak a word. We had to eat in silence and only listen to Hawa Mahal.
It actually reminds me of in our Akashvani Kolkata there used to be a program known as Shonibarer Barbella, which actually used to, narrate stories of supernatural interest, ghost stories, horror stories. And I used to hear this from my mom that there was a point of time when Shonibarer Barbella used to be broadcasted. People used to be glued to their radio sets. The streets used to be empty. Places of work used to go fallow. So truly, Hawa Mahal, truly, this has Hawa Mahal has become a part of. It's right now a part of the syllabus when people, learn or go through audio as a academical content in mass communication. They teach. What was Hawa Mahal? It was a very popular program. True.
So two things, of course, when you mention Bengali literature and ghost stories, Bengali literature has such a rich collection of ghost stories. It's fascinating. It's so amazing. And I think I really admire Bengalis because they have kept their culture alive.
True.
And it's fascinating. And hats off to them. I don't see, maybe Tamilians to some extent, but I think there is some magic in...
in the air of Bengal, maybe.
Yes. And you were saying, so Hawa Mahal.
Yeah.
So, everybody had to be quiet. And now we are at an age when counselors tell families that, you must get together for at least one meal in a day, sit together at the dinner table, have a conversation about the day. Not keep quiet, but have a conversation.
Right.
So this actually also points a finger to the fact that we are losing our skill of conversation.
Yes.
And I know you being a Bengali will not understand this, Arjun. Because Attebazi and everything, it is very much alive in Bengal.
Interaction, it is. It's there in all the tires.
Yeah, but if you go to Delhi or something, and you listen to conversations people have, they are not half as interesting as they used to be a generation
No,
ago.
it is not. It is not truly.
Very, very focused on it would be politics or the corporate world or some kind of something around money and finance.
Yeah, it's kind of constricted between what I feel sustenance and consumption. That is what I mean.
Yeah, right.
And this is the reason where actually I think cultural rooting and a cultural ventilation is very necessary for the society to live.
Very true. And not just exist.
Absolutely. So, ma'am, tell me something about your audio platform, Aao Suno Kahani, how it started.
So, before I tell you about that, I want to say that Aao Suno Kahani, our platform, the spelling is important because something else has also come up. Aao Suno Kahani, our platform, the Kahani is spelled with a double A after H. So, Aao Suno Kahani.
Okay.
So, I have a very close friend her name is Vasundhara Bhaugana. And she and I were both fond of reading and we are fascinated by stories and we have a love for, the Hindi language. And we would often, I was based in Delhi at that time, we would often talk about doing something. And we used to feel very sad that reading has gone out of style and people are not reading all these fascinating stories that are there. And one fine day we said, okay, we got to do something. Let's just not think too much, not plan too much. Let's start this audio YouTube channel. And then for a good 2.5 years or more, every Friday we would upload a video of a story.
Okay.
And our collection of stories in Aao Suno Kahani is over 100 stories, written by some 66 authors from all over the world. We would choose a story, and these are well-known short stories from across the world.
Mm-hmm.
So some were written in Hindi, of course, and some which were in English were translated by us. And we told these stories. So it's a great collection of short stories. And then later on we did even shorter stories, and then we did... the last thing we did on the Aao Suno Kahani was translating and Oh my God. This will come back to me. Wait. You can do I'll tell you the name. Okay. So, oh gosh, how can I forget? Anyway, ask me the next question and this will come back.
Yeah. So,
Animal Farm.
Oh.
So we serialized it in some 14 episodes, translated it, and told it.
Wow.
And since then, we, sort of not uploaded anything because we feel that's a great collection of stories anyway. So we need to, and she got busy, I got busy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
and one more thing, sorry. Yeah. It is also available. Aao Suno Kahani is on all the prominent audio channels.
Okay.
So Hubhopper and Spotify and even on Ghana.com for some reason, and Apple and Google.
Right.
It's there everywhere.
So, ma'am, you have been a storyteller, of course. Apart from that, a speaker, public speaker. Apart from that, an author and a filmmaker too. So, all these, I think, creates a confluence. I mean, mediums might be different, but they're the same, telling a story. So, how do you feel about yourself as a complete storyteller? Which part of you is more, profound as a storyteller?
So I don't feel like a complete storyteller because it's like there are always more stories emerging, and kahani abhi baki hai mere dost.
Right.
So there is no end to end, like I like to say. Where one story ends, that is actually the beginning of so many strands of other stories. So, but yes, I have dabbled in storytelling, stories in multiple ways. And I only realized it maybe 15 years ago.
Okay.
When somebody asked me to talk about my work at a platform. And I said, my work? What have I been doing really? And I looked back and I had done all these things, but they were all connected to stories. And even the workshops I used to do for teachers, which had numerous modules, I realized ultimately it is the stories. If you can connect them to stories, everything else falls in place. So I stopped doing other modules and I would just do the workshop on storytelling as a vital tool to learning. So yes, I have written, performed, translated, edited, audio, and I have half a dozen podcasts and shot as a filmmaker. And I think it's been an organic progression. So none of this was planned. Like a good story which you are reading, you don't know what's coming next.
Right.
So I think so far my life has been like a good story, a great story where you don't know what's happening next, what's around the next corner. And
True.
So it's not a story where there is already an ending and the middle and everything is charted out. No, it's been, and it has allowed me to stay connected to the child in me, which I don't think any other profession would.
And that's very important.
Absolutely.
That's very important. So, ma'am, we're nearing down to a last question. And what would be your piece of advice for the wannabe young storytellers, the young guns who are actually working with the social media, trying to come up as a storyteller?
Okay. So, thank you for asking that question. Because my advice to anybody who wants to be a storyteller or wants to tell stories in any medium is to read.
True.
The more you read, the more enriched your mind is going to be, and the better you would be at telling stories. I mean, better stories would come out of your brain then. So, in fact, Shashi Tharoor has written this piece called "I Plead That You Read," And he's talked about the importance of reading. And reading, I think, to me, is a very, very vital human activity.
Absolutely.
And there, it can't be, you can't sort of exchange it with anything else. And when you talk about storytelling on social media, of course, there are these shorter reels and everything. Where there are lots of people. The good thing about those things is that there is a lot of creativity which has come up. But then there is a lot of some good stuff and some not so great stuff and some really mediocre and some really bad stuff.
Yes.
So whether you are making reels or whether you are making films, I think reading is something that I would encourage, and not just storytellers, but every human being to do.
Very true. Very true. So well spoken, ma'am. And conversing with you really was like a journey with the time, getting back to my own childhood days, and really spending and listening to the profound things, what really means to be life. So I would earnestly thank you from Obo and from also our reverent audiences. So once again, thank you, ma'am. And we wish कि आपका कहानी चलते रहे.
Thank you, Arjun. Thank you.
Dear listeners, we heard the story, rather stories about how and why storytelling is such an important part of our participating culture in the society. In the present time, when social loneliness is a probing factor sometimes in our lives, we could say storytelling is a window to express and to be expressed, keeping us fastened with our roots. So, as I bid farewell for the day, I would like to remind you that we will be coming back with more such stories only on Obo. Till then, stay well, stay in peace, and stay tuned to Obo.